Okay, I think that's enough time for everybody to have joined that wants to. So welcome everybody to today's presentation. This is a presentation on making your business cyber safe and AI ready and understanding the Microsoft licensing. My name is Phil Aldridge from Fuse Technology. A little bit of my background. I've owned and operated a managed service provider in the professional services space for about 25 years now. I'm based in Perth in Australia, and we've been asked to put this presentation on to explain a bit more about the Microsoft licensing. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I'll just open up my chat window there. Put them in the chat, and I'll try and get around to the questions. I may not have all the answers. If I don't, I will take the questions back to my team and ask everybody to give me an answer, and I'll send it off to the participants of this call. So what are we going to be talking about today? Here is the agenda. So you'll see that first of all, we're going to spend a good chunk of time on directors' responsibilities. What do directors have to do? What they're expected to do? Now, I appreciate that not everybody on the call is probably a director, but you probably report to a director. So this is twofold. This is for directors to understand what they need to do, and for people that report to directors to tell the directors the information they need in order to be able to report and do proper governance on their organization from a cyber AI perspective. We will then briefly discuss the essential 8. Then we'll go into how to make your Microsoft tenants secure. And finally, we'll end up with the differences in the types of licenses that Microsoft are offering. And right at the end, a little bit about Fuse, my business, just to cover off so everybody knows what we do. So directors' responsibilities. I think majority of businesses in Australia are small businesses, like over 95% are called small businesses. And actually, up till now, small businesses have been exempt from regulations around reporting, predominantly exempt. If you're in specific industries, you are required to report, but the majority of companies don't have to report. Now, the Australian government proposed February last year, I think it was, abolishing the exemption for small businesses, so that small businesses will be included within the Privacy Act's scope for reporting. Now, that's an additional 2.3 million small businesses that are going to have to do this reporting. It's not in place yet, hasn't happened yet, and we don't actually know when it's going to happen. But when it does happen, there's a few things that are going to change. So in terms of what you have to do, if you are the director of a business and it's a small business and you have personal private information on clients, staff, members of the public, whatever it might be, you're going to have to ensure that you ensure your business is cyber secure so that you're not going to get fined by the government. You might still get attacked and hacked, and you might still lose the data, but you'll need to be able to demonstrate that you've done everything that you can to ensure that didn't happen, and you're supposed to report it properly, etc., etc. And the reason you're going to have to do that is because the minimum fine is going to be $50 million for serious and repeated breaches. If it's your first offence, I'm sure it's not going to be a $50 million fine. But if it's, if you've had it a few times, you could be up for a $50 million fine. Now, what that's going to impact is cyber insurance premiums are going to probably go through the roof, I would think, to cover this this shortfall, because most people have cyber insurance for $1 or $2.5 million, just to cover recovery, to cover reporting, remediation, etc. of the hack. So you can see on the screen here, regulations are tightening. That's very important. Insurance is going to get harder and harder to get. It's already hard. I would say that if you are an organization that has cyber insurance and you're not filling out your insurance policy every year yourself, there's probably a problem. Your insurance agent should not be filling out the form for you because they probably don't understand your IT situation. So as a director or a board member, what should you ensure? Now, I put 6 things on here. Most insurances these days want you to make sure that you have a third-party security review every year. Very few people do this, but that's just employing somebody else other than your MSP to do a security review. Not complicated. They should find something. You should also be asking the right questions of IT, and I'll come to that because that's the next slide. You also need to be getting regular updates, and in your board meetings, if you're not discussing and reporting on cybersecurity at every single board meeting, then you're probably not doing proper governance. It obviously depends on what information you have, but you really, really should be discussing cyber at every single meeting. Need to make sure that your cyber insurance application is correctly completed, as I mentioned earlier. Got to make sure your staff are trained. There's 2 ways to look at this. You can either train your staff, which is a requirement of the Essential 8, but you can also try to limit the possibility of your staff making errors, because it doesn't matter how well you train people, they're still going to make mistakes. And then finally, you've got to ensure that you do trial runs, whether that's trial runs of a security breach, whether it's trial runs of connectivity downtime, whether it's trial runs of your backup, whatever. Your IT needs to be tested. This slide here is I think one of the important ones for directors. So nobody expects, and certainly the regulators don't expect, directors to be cybersecurity experts. Not every board can have a cybersecurity expert on the board. So if you don't have an expert on the board, what questions can you be asking of your IT to get the answers to ensure that you're doing cybersecurity properly? So there's 8 questions. None of them are actually technical. They are asking questions of the IT department, of the external IT provider, to report on various things so that you as a board can know, are we doing what's required? Because you cannot blame the IT department or your external provider for being hacked. It might be their fault, but ultimately it comes down to the board and the directors. They're the ones that are responsible if you get a hack. So I encourage you to take a screenshot of that particular slide and make sure that those 8 questions are being answered at your company's board. And if you're in the IT space, if you're an MSP for companies, make sure you're providing this information to your clients, because then they will know that you're doing a good job. It's important to understand that cyber security it's not just something you do and it's finished. It's a journey, and you have to break the whole project down into smaller parts, start with something that you can manage and then add more bits on. Very important to understand that this is a business risk issue. Cybersecurity is not an IT issue. Yeah. As an organization, you probably have a business risk profile, looking at all the different areas of your business, from what if we lost our best client to what if half of our staff members suddenly resigned. Those are risks that an organization would be discussing and mitigating against. And cybersecurity is one of these business risks. So you've got to make sure that you've got this one covered. You adopt strategies that match your risk with your expenditure. If you're $1 million company, there's no point spending $500,000 on cybersecurity. It doesn't match the risk profile. Okay. And as I said, just start somewhere. Very important. And why is it important? Look, this is a little bit old now, but cybersecurity, the third line there, shows that cybercrime is the 3rd largest GDP behind the US and Chinese nations. And it won't be long before that surpasses China and then surpasses the US. Okay, if you add up all of the drug and sexual exploitation around the world, it's still pales into insignificance compared to cybercrime. So it is very important. And that's because cybercrime is extremely easy to get involved in these days. If you are a bad actor, the one on the bottom right-hand corner here that says stolen usernames and passwords, think about this, $150 for 400 million usernames and passwords. And then you use AI to build you a bot that uses those usernames and passwords to try and exploit various websites and various apps, etc., etc. Not hard to do. Much easier these days with AI. And if it's so cheap to get involved, more people will be getting involved. And with AI, they're going to be quicker and better at doing all of this, which just makes the job of the IT provider like Fuse harder and harder. So we have to stay on top of this. And a lot of the time I hear people talking about whether or not the risk is actually there for a small business. Now, I put this slide together and I think I quite like this one. On the left-hand side there are things that we do on a daily basis where we accept the risk. So you fly on a plane, it's a 1 in 11 million chance of it being a plane crash. A 1 in 4 million odds of being hit by lightning in Australia. These odds we accept. Getting hit by a bus on the road in a developed country, 1 in 500,000. Okay, everybody flies, walks around in fields, and everybody crosses the road. We all accept those risks because the odds are sufficiently great that we don't think it's a tangible risk. On the right-hand side, I've taken the stats from the government in Australia, looking at how many businesses there are, how many SMEs there are, how many reported attacks there are every year, to find out how many actual businesses report attacks. Now, that's based on reported attacks. And as I said earlier, 95% of all businesses don't have to report attacks. So this figure of 1 in 62 actually is probably much more like 1 in 12, 1 in 15. But that 1 in 62 are the odds that within the next 12 months, your SME will be hacked. This is what I consider to be horse racing odds. You know, you would bet on this. So this is not odds that anybody should be prepared to take. You should be looking to secure your business so that you're not one of these statistics, not one of these 94,000 reported attacks a year. Okay. And it's getting harder and harder. And I want to cover off the AI side of this now, because that's part of what this presentation is about, and understanding the risks of AI. This is a slide from February, I think February last year, actually. This is the landscape of well-known AI apps. So you can see, you know, there's hundreds and hundreds there. There's thousands of them by now, I should think, if I could get an updated screenshot for this. And all of these companies, we all are quite happy to sign up for as an organization and create an account with them, put data with them, and use their services, either free or paid. Now, we're all very, very keen on AI at the moment. Everybody is sort of talking about it. It's the buzzword. I do a lot of talks on the governance of AI, and that's what I'm covering off today, because it's very important that you understand that if something is free and you're using one of these free AI apps, even if it's like for 30 days or whatever, and you're uploading data, that data and control of the results from that data probably are not within you, controlled by you. Yeah, you don't own or have sovereignty on that data. The free tool has it. If you have a paid tool that you're using, an external paid tool, again, you're going to have to check the terms and conditions very carefully. Get your legal team to check the terms and conditions to make sure that the data ownership and the sovereignty is still yours and not the AI's. Okay. How do you protect your organization when it comes to implementing AI? So I would recommend you ask your business units to identify areas that AI tools would help them. This isn't an IT issue. Ask the business units, ask HR, ask accounts, say to them, hey, go away and come back with what you think AI can help us with, and try and find out which tools will help them solve those solutions. And then before anything is done, you check the terms and conditions with your legal team to make sure that those are appropriate for your organization. And the last one is really, really important. You need to have a predefined list of AI tools, company approved, that everybody knows this is what you're allowed to use, and you are not allowed to use anything else. And it's important that people and staff understand that, because if you don't have this and one of your staff goes away and signs up for some random AI tool, uploads a load of company data to deliver something that the boss asked them to do, if that gets hacked and all that data gets leaked, it's not really the staff's fault. It's your fault for not having a predefined list of AI tools that you use and clearly stating to everybody that they shouldn't be using anything else. So that's the sort of the compliance and governance side of the AI. Very important that you make sure this is done. And then how do you implement AI? So from a Microsoft perspective, you're using Copilot and Copilot within all the different apps that Microsoft have. And the data within your Microsoft tenant is what Copilot will look at, and it won't look at anything else. You know, if you've got an external HR system or a external accounting system, Copilot isn't going to be looking at that data because that's not within your Microsoft tenant. So you've got to make sure that everything is where it needs to be so that you can run the AI platforms against the data. Now, if you've got on-premise servers and you've got file servers in the office that aren't synced to cloud, that's also not going to be included in your results from your AI Copilot searches. So you've got to make sure that everything is cloud-based. You have to make sure that you've got permissions and policies in Microsoft set up properly. This is really, really important, because when you've got a file within a folder, within a folder, within a folder, within a folder, most people won't know that they have access to that file. So they'll never see it and they'll never find it. But Copilot can easily find that. So one of the biggest problems with implementing AI within an organization from a Copilot perspective is intentional or accidental content oversharing. You really need to make sure that people have just enough access and nothing more. And very important is to consider the old adages, the same with databases, but rubbish in, rubbish out. And I'll give you a very, very simple example. Most organizations probably have a folder for proposals. And in that proposals folder, you put all of the proposals, whether it be version 1, 2, 3, or 4 of the same proposal, you leave them all in the same folder, and the final one is probably version 4, let's say, or for another client, it might be version 3. If you then ask Copilot to please look in this folder and summarize all the proposals, it's going to be looking at all those old proposals that are no longer valid, that have inaccurate information. So rubbish in, rubbish out. So you've got to make sure that your data is structured such that people can get the right results that they're expecting. Because one thing that Copilot and all these other AI solutions will do is give you really good looking results. Whether or not the content is accurate is really up to the individual to find out. So you've got to make sure that you've got your data in the cloud. You've got to assess the data to make sure that it's all relevant. You've got to make a deployment strategy so that you're not allowing people access to data that they shouldn't have. You don't want your junior office admin person having access to the salary of the employees, for example. And then once you've deployed it, you've got to manage it. You've got to look at the reporting on the from the AI tool to make sure that no one's doing searches they shouldn't be doing. Is anyone searching for managing director's salary package? You're going to make sure that these things aren't happening. That's basically from the governance perspective, and so for directors and for companies providing information to directors to know what a company should be doing. So let's move on to the essential 8. So now that you know that you have business risk, what do you do about that business risk? How do I know that my business is secure? So this is the essential 8 framework, or essential 8 maturity model. It's the Australian Signals Directorate's cybersecurity framework for small businesses, and it's based on the Microsoft platform. It can be applied to other solutions, but it's very easy to match the requirements of, or the security controls of the Essential 8 to Microsoft within the back end of Microsoft. So there's 8 specific areas there. They're all, they're very easy. Most of you will understand backups. Most of you will understand multi-factor authentication. Some of the other ones, application control, user application hardening, etc., that gets a lot more complicated. But basically, those are the 8 areas, and within those 8 areas, the maturity model is split into 4 levels, and these are the 4 levels. You have level 0, which literally means you do nothing. You haven't really made any changes to the default settings of Microsoft. You have level 1, which is basic stuff. You've probably got multi-factor authentication applied here, but you haven't really got a lot of policies in place to restrict things within the Microsoft tenant. Maturity level 2 is what Fuse would consider to be the sweet spot of where a company should be. This would mean that you've implemented the majority of Microsoft's security settings. You've got conditional access policies in place. You're also doing the external stuff that is outside of the Microsoft tenant. So think your backups, think cybersecurity training. These are done outside of the Microsoft tenant. But that would be, if you're maturity level 2 and you're confident that you're there, you're probably in a good position, and you should know, yeah, we're relatively secure. There's a lot of people that are worse off than us. If you're doing defense level contracts, you probably want to be at maturity level 3, which is actually a lot harder to achieve. But yeah, as I said, if you're doing defense contracts, you'll need to be there. So, and the way to get your maturity level sorted is you first of all have to look at your current status. Where is your organization at the moment? Do a review of where your Microsoft tenant and external things comply currently with the controls within the Essential 8. Then create a roadmap of where you want to get to. So don't go, we're at level 0, we want to get to level 3. Go, right, let's do it step by step. Let's get to level 1 first. How do we get to level 1? Once you get to level 1, reassess again. Have a look at your organization, create a roadmap to get to level 2, and then maybe later do another one to get to level 3. So it's a step-by-step process. You have to make sure that your senior management and your leadership are bought into this. You don't want the MD going, oh, I want to be excluded from multi-factor authentication. I want to be excluded from this because it's too complicated for me and I won't make the mistake. Essential 8 doesn't work like that. Either you are compliant or you are not compliant. Okay, you cannot be partially compliant. So if you want to say you're level 2, that means everybody in the organization is doing all of these things, and the system is set up to do all of these things for everybody. And then, implementing the controls, that's probably more down to your IT department or your IT vendor to implement the controls. Training of the employees and monitoring their training of cybersecurity. And then the Essential 8 changes on a regular basis. They update regularly the controls. They add new controls, they edit existing controls, and you've really got to make sure that your IT provider or your IT department is updating your security settings within the Microsoft tenant to match the current controls. There is no solution out there at the moment that you can click on that goes, check my Microsoft tenant against Cyber 8, Essential 8, and give me a report, because it's a lot more complicated than that. So don't think it's a very, very simple process. It's not. So that's the essential 8. That's what we think companies should be looking to achieve. Yeah. Once you, as I said, once you get to level 2, you'll know that you are in a good space. Yeah. Your board will know that you're in a good space, and your directors can be comfortable that everything is being done that is supposed to be done. Which brings us to, how do you get there from a Microsoft perspective? Now, slightly controversially, out of the box, Microsoft, for your situation, is not necessarily very secure. Microsoft provides an extremely secure solution if you secure it. So you see the first one there, 90+% of businesses on Microsoft 365 are considered to be at high risk of cyber attack. And that is because they've implemented Microsoft Tenant and they've not made any changes. Maybe they've done multi-factor authentication, but they've not done anything else. They've not implemented any of the features that increase your security level. Okay. The third one there, imagine Windows XP, not used anymore. In normal business, you don't use it anymore because it's so old. But a lot of the hackers, for example, are using old computers. They've probably got a Windows XP computer. So why would you allow someone with an XP computer to try and hack into your tenant? Yeah, this is called legacy authentication. So you disable legacy authentication. It's one of the features that you can enable. It's a very simple one, and it stops a lot of people from being able to hack into your systems. Now, I'd also like to point out that the supply chain is where the biggest risk is. A lot of companies who are at the top of the food chain, the really big organizations, are passing down their security requirements and their cyber policies and environmental, social, and governance policies. They're passing them down the supply chain to the small businesses, making it the small businesses' responsibility to be cyber secure, which means that the hackers know this. So the hackers aren't necessarily targeting BHP and Rio and South 30, all these big companies. They're now starting to go, who's in the food chain? Which part of the supply chain is at risk? And that'll be the small businesses, because they don't normally implement security. So, you as a small business are at risk. If you're a medium-sized business, you're at risk. And if you're a large business, you're at risk. No one is exempt from this at the moment. But from a technology perspective, you've got to understand that if you're a company employing an outsourced provider to do your security, that security company or IT provider has all your logins, has all your details. How secure are they? You need to make sure that your IT provider is secure. You need to make sure that your IT department has secure policies. And Microsoft make this very easy for you to make sure that you're secure. Okay. Now, this screen here on the left is the Microsoft Secure Score, and I've sort of got a purple box around secure score of 22.31. That is the out-of-the-box secure score without any implementation changes or anything done whatsoever. Now, 22%, it could be 21, it could be 26. That's out of 100. It's not a good score. And Microsoft make it really easy for you to enhance your security. So probably not very easy to read, but there's a bigger purple box there that has a list of things, improvement activities that you, your IT department or your IT vendor can do to enhance this secure score. And if you configure your systems well, you'll get to a system that looks like the right-hand side there, where it's over 80%. Now, at the bottom, you'll see as a guideline, I've said that under 30%, you're not secure. Between 30 and 60, you're partially secure. 60 to 80 is probably the sweet spot. Think Essential 8 Level 2. These don't necessarily match exactly, but there's a lot of crossover between the two. So 60 to 80% is probably where everybody should be. Over 80% starts to get a lot harder. Think level 3 of Essential 8. It starts to get more restrictive. So you need to make sure, and there's a screen on your admin for your Microsoft tenant has a screen that you can go into, find the secure score. You can look at this and go, are we remotely secure or not? And if not, get someone to come in and help you work out what needs to be done. Because it's very, very straightforward, but everybody just assumes I have Microsoft, I've implemented it, it's all good. Therefore, Microsoft's a very secure company, which they are. They're the world's biggest security company. They spend more on security than anybody else on the planet. But you've got to make it secure for your tenant, for your account. So biggest takeaway from today's meeting, please make sure you do this. This is a little bit of a generalization, but I want you to sort of understand that it doesn't have to be complicated. We spoke earlier about 95% of businesses in Australia are small businesses. A big chunk of that 95% are micro businesses, 1 to 7 people. Now, a company of 1 to 7 people probably isn't going to employ an expensive managed service provider to manage their systems for them, to make sure that they're constantly monitoring everything. They're probably going to want to do a little bit more of a set and forget kind of strategy. So on the left-hand side, Microsoft provides you the ability to implement security defaults. You can set them in Microsoft Entra, you can set them in the Defender, you can enable multi-factor authentication, and you can lock down administrators. Those would be the 4 things that you can do that you can set and forget, and I would say that is suitable for micro and small businesses. And if you've got Microsoft Business Premium, you can do all of that. Okay. If you're a larger organization, think scale-ups, think big business, the policy of set and forget really doesn't work for you guys. You need to be looking at how do we control all of our devices? How do we deploy Intune? How do we restrict where people can log into our systems from? If no one's traveling to Russia, don't let people in Russia log into your systems. Restrict the devices. If everybody has a company laptop or a company device, then restrict the ability to log into your tenant to only those devices. It immediately stops anyone who doesn't have a company laptop from being able to log in and hack your systems. Sorry, I got restrict devices twice there. I can't remember why. And then restrict apps. You don't want people with applications that you don't want to be logging into, or you don't want people to log into apps that you have that they shouldn't have. So you try and use what they call conditional access policies. It gets very complicated. It's not something that a average business owner is going to get involved with because you can easily mess things up. Security defaults, easy to set. Conditional access policies, a lot more complicated. Conditional access policies are IT department and IT service provider things to do. So set and forget, constant monitoring. Okay. Now we get to the licensing part of Microsoft, which was one of the things I'm asked to discuss in this presentation. And this is actually where it gets, or can get, extremely complicated. And I've decided to try and keep it simple for everybody because there's a lot more licenses out there than I'm going to talk about. Okay, so I will talk about business standard, which is what many of you will be using. I will talk a bit about business premium, which some of you will be using. If you're a much larger organization, I'll talk a little bit about E3 and E5. So I'm not going to talk about business basic. I'm not going to talk about E1. I'm not going to talk about the M licenses. But here you can see the different costs. This is correct at time of writing based on the recommended retail price that we have. And you can see that there's a big gap in the pricing, okay? And I'm going to try and explain what the differences are between all of this, okay? But just understand that an E5 license is getting close to triple what business premium license is. And they are, to all intents and purposes, very similar in terms of what they give you. There are nuances between the two, but they are very, very similar solutions. Now, one thing to note is that as of tomorrow, I think, October the 1st, yeah, as of tomorrow, we as a Microsoft reseller can no longer sell E3 or E5 licenses with Teams built in. So if you want them today, we can get them to you, but tomorrow we can't. What Microsoft's done, for various reasons that I'm not going to get involved into, they have split Teams out from the E licenses. So you'll see there, Microsoft 365 E3, no Teams. And the price for Teams, I'll put at the bottom there, which is currently at $790 ex GST. You would have to buy that as an add-on to your E3 licenses. Now, why would you buy premium? Why would you buy E3, E5, etc.? This screen is a very simplified version of why. Okay. The biggest difference from an end user perspective, from a client perspective, between business, standard and premium and Microsoft E3 and E5 is the limit of 300 seats. If you are under 300 staff or 300 seats, etc., probably business standard and business premium is what you need. If you're over 300 seats, then you cannot use standard and premium. You have to be using E3 and E5. That is the single biggest difference. Okay, so that's why the target audience for the business standard and premium is the SMEs, and for E3 and E5, it's the larger enterprises. Another difference is that standard and premium are really designed for cloud-only environments. They're not really designed for companies that have on-premise servers and systems, what they call the hybrid environment. Hybrid, if you've got a hybrid environment, you're probably going to want to go with the E3, E5 licenses. You don't have to buy 300. You can still be a 50-seat organization and buy E3 and E5. It's just going to cost you more. There are some other differences, and I would equate business standard for an SME is similar to E3 for a large organization, and business premium is similar to E5, okay, because it comes with enhanced security and compliance, basically security and compliance. Now, all the things that come as built into business premium and E5, you can buy as individual licenses as well. So you can buy an E3, add on some additional licenses, and effectively get E5, but it will just cost you more. If Power BI is important for you, then E5 comes with it built in. Of course, you can buy it as a standalone product for any of the other licenses, but it comes built into E5. Business Premium does not have Power BI built in except for the free version. The other limit is the Teams limit. So because there is a user capacity on the Business Premium and Standard, there is a Teams capacity on Business Premium and Standard of 300. But you should also note that actually for E3 and E5, it's 1,000 person limit on Teams. The next one I put in for Microsoft App. So this is Microsoft Apps, and this is for the business licenses. They come with the business, and for the enterprise, it comes with enterprise. I know that sounds stupid. Most people won't know what any of the differences are between any of this, but basically it's some functionalities of the Microsoft 365 apps for business and enterprise. Things like Power Map for Excel, Power Query for Excel, mainly around Excel, and also database comparing, etc. These are specific features that are available for the apps with the enterprise licenses that aren't available for the business licenses. 99% of businesses aren't going to be using these features, so it's not really important. And then the last two, SharePoint and Exchange, with the business licenses, you get Plan 1, and with the E licenses, you get Plan 2. And that is really a difference between capacity. So with the business licenses, you might get 50 gig of Exchange online, whereas with the enterprise, you get 100 gig. You probably get the same OneDrive limit, but you might have different SharePoint limits. So it's the SharePoint and the Exchange are really about capacity. Again, You can buy additional storage capacity for your business premium licenses for OneDrive and SharePoint if you want to. So it's not that it's a restrictive, completely restrictive. So that's a very, very basic overview of the differences between the licenses. And as I said, the sweet spot, I think, for most companies should be the business premium licenses, because that is business standard with all the additional security and compliance features that a company might need to achieve Essential 8 Level 2. Okay, business standard is very basic. Although it's not called the basic license, it's called standard. It doesn't really come with enhanced security. You're not going to be able to reach Essential 8 Level 2 with business standard. So as a complete generalization, if you're a company under 300 people that's focused on security, you should be looking at business premium. If you're a company of over 300 people and you're interested in security, which you clearly would be, you'd be looking at E5. But as I said, E5 is pretty much triple the price of business premium, which is why the premium is offered at for small businesses, or focusing on small businesses, because they know small businesses can't afford a huge bill. So then we get to the security differences, and again, they're very intangible. Okay, so you can see here, and I've only really listed the business premium and the Microsoft E5 because, as I said earlier, the standard and the E3 don't really have the security features built in. And the differences between both of these, again, really comes down to your ability to configure settings, etc. For the majority of businesses, the Plan 1 licenses are going to be perfectly okay. The Plan 2 probably allows you to do more stuff. If you're really intense on security, you might want it. So for example, let me give you an example. Defender for Office. There we go, Defender for Office. Plan 2 adds phishing simulations, post-breach investigation, on top of what Plan 1 offers. So Plan 1, which comes with Business Premium, protects your email from zero-day malware. It also provides you protection from phishing and business email compromise. But Plan 2 adds on to that phishing simulations as an example. So you could do phishing simulations externally, or you can add it into your license. So you can upgrade a business premium to be Defender for Office 365 Plan 2 and pay additional for it if that feature is important to you. All of these Plan 1, Plan 2s, there are slight differences, but there's no point in me getting into detailed descriptions of all of them. If anybody has any questions on the actual differences, let me know. I'll get back to you with an answer. But the Microsoft Entra ID, what used to be called Azure Active Directory, the Azure Information Protection, and the Microsoft Defender, those 3/4 products are the main difference between standard and premium and E3 and E5. And if you're focused on security, if you have a governance and a compliance requirements to do security well, then you need to be looking at one of these two products, because you're not going to get it with the standard or the E3 licenses. So my next slide, I'm trying to sort of wrap up everything that I've spoken about so far to try and explain to you all what are the key things that you need to do. So understanding your business risks as a director or as somebody supporting directors, I think that's key to understand, because, you know, I've mentioned it before and I mention it again. A lot of the time, the IT department don't know what is important for the directors to know. The directors don't know what to ask. So you need to be making sure that you're enabling your directors with the correct information so that they can report to the board on the business risks around cybersecurity. Once you've got that sorted, you need to make sure that you've got the most appropriate licenses. So if you're a 50-person company and you're doing basic security and you want to be Essential 8 Level 2, you probably don't need E5 licenses. because you're going to be paying a lot more than you need to be paying because you could be using business premium. So you've got to make sure that you have the right licenses and that you add on to your basic license, whatever you buy, you add on to that whatever additional features from Microsoft that you need to make sure that you achieve the level of security that you're looking for. So if phishing simulations are important to you, you add on the license that can do that, or you alternatively buy an external security solution to do that for you. But it comes built into various licenses of the Microsoft platform. The key one here, and this is where I see the majority of issues, is making sure your Microsoft tenant, your Microsoft environment is secure. Making sure that you've looked at someone's looked at the secure score and gone, we're only at 35%. Let's have a plan to get us to 70. What's that plan? How's it going to impact staff? Because it will impact staff. You'll make changes that will stop things from working. It'll stop, if you do it properly, for example, it will stop somebody working from home on their home computer, which is the same computer that their kids all use to log into all these gaming sites and stuff. You shouldn't be allowing people to do that. So it will restrict what people can do. But once you get your Microsoft environment up to a decent secure score with some additional stuff added on, like backups, like the training, then you're going to be in a very, very good position. Then you need to monitor what's happening. Are people doing things they shouldn't be doing? Is somebody trying to log in from a home computer? Do you have people trying to log in from Russia? I just use Russia as an example. Could be anywhere. Do you have any of your accounts that are constantly being someone's trying to hack? If you do, then do something about it. Yeah, change the username, enhance the security, whatever it might be. Do something to fix that potential issue. They might not be getting in, but constant battering against to try and hack an account just uses resources, and you don't want that. So you've got to monitor what's going on and make sure that everything is as it should be. And this is the one that I think it just doesn't happen. Testing of backups. Everybody says, yes, I've got a backup. Great. When did you last test the backup? Oh, don't know. Don't know for me means never been done. So if the backups aren't tested at least once a month, then you should assume your backups are not working. And then you've got to say to yourself, if we lost all of our data, what would happen as a business? If you say to yourself, we'd be perfectly okay, we'd be fine if we lost all of our data, okay, that's fine. But most companies aren't going to say that. Most companies are going to say, if we lost all of our data, that would be an absolute unmitigated disaster. We probably wouldn't recover from it, which means it's really important to have the backup sorted. And the disaster recovery plans. So what happens when your office is unavailable? No one can come to the office. Can everybody work from home? What happens if the internet dies in the office? What happens if you have a hack, a security breach? Yeah. What policies and procedures automatically kick in? Who does what? When do they do it? Who do you inform? Do you tell your clients immediately? Do you call your insurance broker? Who's responsible for managing the whole process? Is it IT? Is it somebody at the board level? Who do you inform? All these sorts of questions. And we often get asked by clients, hey, we know you want us to do a disaster recovery test. We want to do one. Okay, great. When do you want to do that then? Oh, well, look, no one's going to be working on Sunday, so can we do it on Sunday? And I'll just say, what are the possibilities that you get hacked on a Sunday when no one's working? You've got to do it when it's, most likely to happen, which is at the worst time. Now, I'm not suggesting you do a disaster recovery when you're 2 hours away from submitting a really urgent tender for a massive job that you really want to win. But when business is as usual, that's when you should be doing a business recovery test to make sure that all your policies and procedures work and that everything actually happens. So I would ask all of you on the call, and please be honest about this to yourself. You don't have to tell me, but be honest with yourself. Which of the above 5 are you confident you currently do? Yeah? If you're doing all 5, hats off to you. well done. Majority of people might be doing one or two of those well. Some of you might go, oh, we're actually not doing any of those 5 things. And that is a massive issue for your organization. Yeah. If you haven't secured your Microsoft environment, if you've not got the right licenses in place, if you're not monitoring what's going on, and you're not testing, and you're in a bad space. Because going back to my earlier slide of 1 in 62, which is more likely 1 in 12, 1 in 15, you're probably going to get hacked at some point. Yeah. And if you haven't set up your Microsoft environment correctly, you're going to be in a whole heap of issues. Data will be gone, client list will be compromised, and potentially, depending on your situation, you might have to report this. And if you have to report it, coming back from that is really, really difficult. You know, it's easier if you're an Optus or a Medicare or whatever. You can come back from this because the majority of people won't change their phone provider because their phone provider got hacked. It's just too hard for them. But if you've got one client that's 80% of your business and you get hacked and you lose all their data and they change providers, they move on to one of your competitors and you lose 80% of your business, you got to ask yourself, do you still have a business? So making sure those 5 steps to security are in place and sorted is very, very important. So just a little bit about Fuse Technology. We're obviously doing this presentation. We are a managed service provider, so think outsourced IT department. I would actually say that we're a managed secure service provider. Not many IT providers out there are doing security. We do. We only take on clients that want to be secure. So we would help you to buy and advise of all your IT equipment. We would install it and set it up. We'll secure it, and then we'll on-support it. And this is where we are. We're predominantly an Australian-based organization. I'm over in the West Coast. We have a large team over on the East Coast. We have a big service support desk in Vietnam, and we have offices in Vancouver and London with staff there as well. And we have global clients. So we have actually a 24/7 service desk. Just a quick slide of some of our clients. You may not recognize some of those logos. If you do, great. If you don't, most of these clients range from 30 seats to 400 seats. That's our sweet spot. I'm also extremely proud that our organization achieved our ISO 27001 certification. We got that last month. That was a big push. So this is good because it demonstrates to our clients that our information security systems are secure and properly managed. And I think that's very, I actually think that every managed service provider should probably be ISO 27001 certified by now. If they're not, they should be looking at getting it, because then you can demonstrate to clients that you know what you're doing. I'm here talking about security and making sure that you do all your Microsoft security the way it's supposed to be done. Are we doing it? Yeah, that's, we're Essential 8. We're not quite level 3. We're Essential 8 level 2, and we're about 80% of the way to level 3. But we're also ISO 27001 certified. So we know about security. For anybody that's interested, this is our security stack. We clearly focus on the one that's on the bottom left here, which is the Microsoft Business Premium. We are a Microsoft certified, gold certified partner. And then those other icons that you see there are what we add on to the Business Premium licensing to make sure our compliance are Essential 8 level 2 compliant. And if a client buys our Security Plus solution, we give a cybersecurity guarantee. That means that if the client gets hacked on our watch, then we will assist them to recover for free. We won't charge them for that, and we will give a rebate of part of their what they paid us to date as compensation for getting hacked under our watch. To date, we haven't had that happen, so things seem to be going well. I'd like to think that's going to stay the same way. These are my contact details. As I said, I'm in Perth. There's my email address if you need it, my phone number, and our company website. So we are almost on time. Probably time for a couple of questions if anybody's got any questions. Excuse me. If not, I will probably just wrap it up. So I'll give 30 seconds for people to put any questions into the chat. I can't see any, so I'm presuming there's no chat, no questions. I doubt I've answered everybody's questions. Most likely people are too scared to ask a question that they might. It's like with directors. Directors don't want to ask questions about cybersecurity because they don't understand it often. But no question's a stupid question. I often ask what I consider to be stupid questions, and people go, "Oh, that was a good question to ask," because a lot of the time other people on the call don't know either. So I can see a couple of people. Yeah, not questions. All right. Well, look, let's wrap that up here. We're pretty much on time. I will happily answer any. If you've got my email address and you've got anything you want to ask me, or you want any advice, you want to understand how to secure your Microsoft environment, just let me know, and we'll have a chat. But for now, I will thank you all for joining, and I will end the meeting. So have a nice rest of the week. Thank you very much.